Can you hear me now? All right. Welcome to the webinar, everybody. This is Launching Your Brand Online, the Keystone presentation from Remix Design. I'll be your host today, Liesl Schrader. I'm the founder and CEO of Remix Design, and I'm here to give a presentation on the web that we've given several times in person in various talks around New York City. It's really kind of the heart of our methodology. And we want to be able to start sharing it in different mediums and have been experimenting with live streaming. So here is the inaugural run of the webinar series. Now this is completely live and interactive. So please make use of the chat to butt in with any questions. Now, when we've done this talk live, it's run about an hour or more. But for the sake of everybody's time today, we want to try to compress it into about 30 minutes. So it'll be an exercise in summarizing the content as well. There's sort of different formats for the same content we've been using. Sometimes in a live talk we have in about an hour. We also want to be able to do kind of a very, very extended version of the same thing that's going to be in a video series, in a video, sort of a video course format. So there are many different ways to get exposed to this in various lengths that we're experimenting with in different formats. So any feedback here is appreciated. This is basically content that I know quite well, but that I'm going to attempt to compress a little bit into a half-hour webinar series so that we can get to everybody's questions, making it very live and interactive and taking advantage of the format. That said, let's get rolling with our presentation deck. Now, JP will be moderating the chat room right now because while I'm in this slide presentation, I won't be able to monitor the stream, but he'll be letting me know if anybody has any questions, because we want to make it very much in the moment. We don't want to necessarily leave all the questions until the end. If we're on a live stream, let's make it as live as possible. All right, before we start, let's attempt to turn up the music. Let's do one last sound test. JP is going to let me know how the sound is, and then we're going to get going through the deck. Just want to make sure everybody can still hear me. All right. So if sound is perfect, if it's not, JP will let me know. No background music. Okay. All right, we're having trouble getting the background music to get to a reasonable level. So we're going to go without it for now, and we're going to try to solve that problem for later. We wanted to be able to have a little bit of background music to kind of mute out the various background noises, get a little bit less awkward silence, but we're having trouble getting it to a manageable level where it both doesn't distract me and you can hear it properly. So that's going to be one of our goals for next time. So the music will stay off so we don't waste any more time messing with that. All right, down to the meat and potatoes. Launching your brand online is a presentation, as I mentioned, we've given many times in live talks, and we're looking to bring this format to the web in a somewhat more concise format, and also to bring it as a video course in a much longer format that will probably be about 3 hours right now. We're working on cutting the audio, but we subtitle it "How to Get Off the Ground Quickly and Make a Great First Impression," and these are really core tenets of what we try to do with our clients at Remix Design. We really specialize in companies that are just kind of getting their start as far as their branding and their public image. And we think that making a great first impression is a great way to summarize what good branding can do if you do it from the beginning and not as an afterthought, not as a luxury, but as an essential part of a new business. So when we give this talk live, we ask everybody to summarize their company, tell us about their company in 60 seconds or less, basically give an elevator pitch. And if anybody wants to do this in the chat, JP will let me know. But if not, I will say that most folks, when they give their elevator pitch, I then ask them to even more concisely, in 3 words, tell me what their company's brand is. Not about the product, not about the benefits, not about the target market. What is the brand? And this should differ a lot from the elevator pitch. The elevator pitch should be about the features, the target market, the benefits, how it's better than the competition. But when you talk about the brand, it's something else entirely. And something that I've learned by doing this presentation is that a lot of entrepreneurs can't actually give me a good summary of their brand because they don't have a good definition of branding in the first place. So I want to start with that. Here's kind of a dictionary definition of branded. The process involved in creating a unique name and image for a product in consumers' mind. La 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 la. There are many different definitions of it, but for our purposes, the one that we kind of made up for our context is that branding is the process of giving a business a personality and a reputation, and the brand management is working to maintain it. So, when you as an entrepreneur come tell me in the talk, first your elevator pitch and then describing your brand, what I really want to see and what I want to kind of help shift your mindset towards is thinking of branding as the personality traits of your business, kind of humanizing the business. Brand tends to use very subjective words, kind of emotional words, words that you would actually also use to describe a human being. Not every company goes around having literally a mascot, but if your company were to have one, what would that mascot be like? That's one way of thinking about it too. But I like to think of it as if your company were a human being, what would their personality be? If they were a friend of yours, how would you describe them to someone else? When you position your company and your brand as personable, it helps you relate to the target market and also helps the target market relate to you. So instead of thinking about things like features, advantages, that's all really important. But for branding, we want to get more emotional and more subjective. That's why branding is a creative field. So brand development, brand management, there's a lot of components to it. But creating these components won't mean much unless your target market can actually see them. Your brand has to be present in the market, and some places you can be present are on the web, perhaps in a local industry community, in local shops, at local meetings, industry events. Not only that, but you've got to have a product that delivers value You need some way for people to experience this. Even as a new company, you don't want to be just all smoke and mirrors. Yeah, you can do pre-launch hype, absolutely. But even if the product is still in development, people need a way to experience it, to try to feel it. And that's the only way that they're really going to know whether it meets their needs or not. And as a new company, one of the most important things you need to start establishing that brand presence is time. And that means starting early, getting started as soon as possible. Brand presence, no matter what you're doing, pre-launch beta versions or hype or just brochures and information and getting feedback, it's a very time-consuming process that only gets stronger the longer you do it. So even if your product is brand new, even if there's nothing like it on the market, even if you're not quite finished with it, we believe it's very important not only to get your product out there from the beginning, but to start branding from the beginning as soon as possible. And this is the way that new products are released nowadays. This is very popular with the startup community, with the entrepreneurship community. This idea of the lean startup. It's how you go from not present to present, from nothing to something, quickly and efficiently and without wasting too much money. This is the method that I would say does the best job of lowering the risk associated with a new business. Doesn't eliminate it. Won't promise that you won't waste any money, but certainly you'll waste it in the most efficient way possible by learning lessons. So what is lean, or the lean startup? This is how its creators define it. A method that teaches you how to drive a startup, how to steer, when to turn, when to persevere, and to grow a business with maximum acceleration. That sounds like a lot of hype. But what is it really? I think of lean as the product development methodology geared towards startups and new businesses. At the center of the lean startup methodology is the minimum viable product, or the MVP. You can think of it kind of like a prototype with some extra requirements or features. An MVP is something that you can create as an early version of the product that still delivers value while you're working on building a more fleshed out, well-developed product. Even though you want the MVP version of the product to deliver value, the main job of an MVP isn't necessarily to serve the customer in the best way humanly possible. It's not the same as your full product. An MVP is sort of a tool for collecting data, a tool for collecting feedback to test the market viability of the product and the business model. It's something that you use to answer or try to help answer the unanswered questions that you still have as a new business doing a very innovative product that perhaps hasn't been done before. Much like any other prototype, you've got to be able to develop it quickly and inexpensively. You're sort of testing a hypothesis, testing a theory, and you're really not sure if this particular product, this particular business model, this particular market is going to work. So it's not in your best interest to put all the bets, all the investment on this initial idea. You have to kind of assume that you're going to get it wrong at least 1 or 2 or 3 times. So your MVP should be something that can be get out quickly. It's going to be very, very imperfect. However, what it will do is get you some feedback from some real users. That's why it's got to deliver some value, because nobody will use it unless they get something out of it. How you decide to price this MVP? Is it free? Is it low cost? Do you perhaps give something in exchange? Perhaps lifetime membership of the full product later on? That's up for you to decide. How much value is it delivering, and how much revenue do you need to bring in on an early basis, or is it more important to get the mass appeal and kind of give it away for free? Or is price sensitivity something that you want to test for, and you know that if you make it free now, it may actually make the product look bad as it's something a little bit more luxury. In that case, you don't want to ever give it away for free because it gives the wrong image. No matter what you choose, use the MVP to try to answer these questions. Get it in front of some real people and get some real feedback, some real unbiased feedback from people that are not within your company, from people that don't know you, people that are in the target market, based on what they say, based on how much they pay for it, based on how often they use it, etc. Whether it's a software product, physical product, even a service. The lean methodology can be used with any type of product, any type of business. I really believe this, even though the lean startup is most often associated with software product startups, tech startups, that sort of thing. I really believe that it can apply to any business. Certainly, if you are doing a physical product, your MVP can be like a prototype with less expensive materials than you would really use in the final version that you're charging full price for. Perhaps less expensive materials that won't last as long but will give a similar feel. If it is an app or a software product, it's all about paring down the amount of features that you include in your MVP. You probably want to keep it even down to just one feature. Decide if people like that one feature, because the other thing about testing and hypothesizing is you kind of want to test one variable at a time. So why not test one feature at a time, then add more based on the feedback. If it's a service business or service product, it is tough. One thing you can do is only deliver a portion of the service, something that's less comprehensive. You can get feedback on things such as a brochure or a diagram or a video describing what maybe the rest of the service might do. They're not actually receiving the service, but there's something that they can give an impression of. In the book Sprint that was written by the folks at Google Ventures, they actually recommend sometimes using a product brochure in running a 1-week sprint to try to get feedback on something. It is not the actual product, but it's something that you can test, something that you can try to give people the same impression from. All right, some pro tips on how to run a lean product system, a lean startup, a lean business of any kind. It will be tough to try to break down the product to the bare essentials needed to deliver value, because you kind of have to decide what those are, decide really what is key, what is the heart of the product, and what is nice to haves. It will mean making some sacrifices in your holistic vision, but that holistic vision can certainly come down later when you are more sure that that vision is really what people want in the first place. Remember, you're investing a lot of time and money into this, so you want to have a little bit more certainty, a little bit more data to prove that this is the right direction to go. Your MVP will absolutely be a product that is imperfect and incomplete, but by taking these sacrifices, cutting these corners for now, you'll be able to do it quickly and inexpensively. You probably won't be able to afford to invest in a perfect product and then have it fail and then do another. However, you can afford to do many, many MVPs, many different iterations of the MVP. Of course, it's really important to get real feedback from real customers, not just your inner circle, people in the target market, and people different from you. The thing about us and testing with people we know is that they'll tend to be pretty similar to us and have similar worldviews and similar experiences. Unless your product is really made for people just like you and you are the target market, even then, go out and get someone who will be willing to criticize you. Because your friends and family may not be willing to criticize you and tell you the hard truth about something that really sucks. When you get this feedback, use it to improve the product and re-release the product at another stage, the better version. It doesn't even have to be like the 2.0 version. It's like the 1.1 version. You got a 1.0 and then you've released a 1.1, 1.2. Just keep iterating, keep re-releasing, keep getting more feedback with these early adopters, with these testers. Keep re-releasing, keep doing more and more experiments, and asking more and more questions. Something you hear a lot in the lean methodology is validating your assumptions. This is part of that experimentation process, that answering that questions. It kind of means that even if you have a very strong feeling that something is true based on your previous work experience, based on market research data, you should still get data to back up any of these assumptions. Don't take anything for granted. And try to just back up any gut feelings you have with data, because you don't want to take the risk that that gut feeling is wrong. What your experience will tell you is what questions to test and what hypotheses to try and test. You're not going in blind. You have a feeling of what is most likely true. You're not taking stabs in the dark. But just so you don't go down a disastrous path, back this up with data and don't go in assuming that things are correct. Like, take the assumptions and turn them into facts, not just assumptions. Once you've done this, iterate it a few times, you may get some really, really harsh feedback. You may find out that this baby you've created, this beautiful product, this beautiful business, might be ugly to people that are not the parents, right? Sometimes your baby is ugly, sometimes your idea sucks, sometimes no one wants to buy it or no one wants to pay for it. It's okay to pivot, it's okay to be wrong. You almost want to assume that your first couple of versions of whatever idea you have are going to be wrong. It never hurts to be a little pessimistic in this process. Just don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to pivot accordingly. Once you find out what people really want, go ahead and give it to them. You know, they're the customers. They're the ones that are going to pay up at the end of the day. So you've got to serve them. Be careful not to serve yourself as an entrepreneur. That's not your job. All right. Best cautionary tale I've ever heard about the opposite of what you should do, the opposite of lean, will be this object right here, the Segway. Let's talk about some of the mistakes that the Segway made upon release of the product. For one thing, they were very, very secretive. They didn't tell anybody what it was, they didn't give any hints. They just wanted to create this mystery about it. But because they didn't tell anybody really what it was, they weren't getting honest, real feedback. They gave it so much hype that the expectations that they created became impossible to meet. They said things like, we're going to change transportation forever. We're going to change the face of cities all around the world. That's a big declaration. They could have met a reasonable amount of success with the Segway, and still it wouldn't have been enough to live up to these absolutely astronomical dreams. So you don't want to set goals that become like literally impossible to meet, because then anything falling short of that feels like a disappointment, even if relatively speaking, it's a success. If you want to talk about the opposite of lean, when they did get user feedback upon sort of like the big full launch that they did without really doing any pre-launches or anything, they were dismissive of it. People, saying that those people just didn't get it. Well, if they don't get it, they're not going to buy it. User feedback is the most valuable thing you have in this stage, so take it seriously. You won't be able to satisfy every need of every single person, but when you see patterns, you can't ignore them. You see things repeated over and over and over in the user feedback, that's when you've got to listen. Another advantage of some of these MVP launches, these pre-launch, these early tests, is that you get to working out any like deal breaker roadblocks that there might be. Safety issues, logistics, legal. They're things that you might actually take for granted. A good idea of an assumption that you want to validate is that my product is safe and will not harm its users. That's a critical deal breaker issue for a successful business. Hey, that's something that you probably want to test in your MVP. Logistics. It turns out that the Segway came into issues because people didn't know how to classify it legally. Is it like a motorcycle? Is it like a car? Is it like a vehicle? Or what was made to be used on the sidewalks? Was it safe to use on sidewalks? And that's why, that was a big roadblock that they would have solved if they just did a couple of maybe like, beta tests in a few cities. They would have realized these issues a lot sooner and find out that maybe there were critical flaws. But they didn't. They let assumptions go unvalidated. They took way too much for granted without backing it up with data. And a lot of it does unfortunately come down to the ego, and the ego of the entrepreneur, or maybe just fear or attachments to the original idea and not being able to let it go. And they just didn't want to change. You don't want to be your own worst enemy in business. You have already too many other enemies as an entrepreneur. Don't let your ego get in the way. Don't let your own emotions get in the way of your success. Okay. If there are any questions, again, if we're going too fast, let JP know in the chat. And he'll let me know over Hangouts. If not, we're going to move on to another methodology that we embrace wholeheartedly at Remix Design that's related to Lean, sort of a cousin. Agile is very, very popular, especially in software, but also in many other industries and types of projects. The way its creators define it, the Agile movement proposes alternatives to traditional project management. Agile approaches are typically used in software development to help businesses respond to unpredictability. I would definitely say that with a new business, with a new startup, unpredictability is a huge factor to deal with, which is why this method has become so popular, but has also gotten many more applications than software development. Of course, what we do at Remix Design, we call Agile design. So while if you think of Lean as a business development and product development methodology, you can think of Agile as the project management methodology that goes along with it. Just as Lean is really targeted towards new businesses, I believe Agile is perfectly suited toward technology and digital media, or any company that uses this in their marketing efforts, i.e. every company in existence. Unless you are a company with no marketing, no online presence at all, Agile is something that you can work into your company when it comes to your branding. Similar to Lean, you don't want to release the product all at once. You want to have sort of an MVP mindset. You can run your Lean product development methodology with an Agile project management philosophy and method. Because in an Agile project, you have a regimented system for your releases, for your iterations. You divide it into these set blocks of time that they call in Agile a sprint. And a sprint can vary in length from company to company. I would say the average, pretty much the standard, is about 2 weeks. That's what we use as well. But I would say it can vary 1 to 3 weeks. Sometimes 4, even though then it's really not the same thing as Agile anymore. Agile really wants you to have short bursts, short release cycles. The idea is that each one of these sprint releases makes small incremental improvements and additions. It doesn't have to be just the product itself. It can be your website. It can be your blog. It can be your social media, anything like that. It could be any sort of branding, any sort of design product. The caveat here is that within these sprint cycles, you have to make something that's finished and release ready. So you kind of have to decide, what can I actually get done to completion, release ready for the world in my sprint time, in this 2-week cycle, let's say. Because unless you make it release ready, people won't really be able to get value from it. They're not going to get any extra benefit. But the upside is, from your very first release, even if it's only in 2 weeks, people will start getting value from it immediately. Whether it's a website, whether it's a blog, whether it's any sort of branding that you might have, you'll really get off the ground quickly, as we say, by making something release ready in as short as 2 weeks. You'll be able to go from nothing to something, even if it's just in the form of an MVP. And you'll keep going, you'll keep experimenting, you'll keep iterating, and you'll keep releasing, making it better and better. Also, by releasing out into the real world, you'll get in front of those real customers, just as we said, getting their real, honest feedback. You'll get out into the market early in your product's life, and you'll spend a lot less money because if it's only 2 weeks worth of resources, of a team's resources, it'll be a lot less costly. You'll take less risk, and you'll start to use your Agile project, whatever it may be, as a way to get feedback, data, validate your assumptions, answer questions, and that way you know where to go in the future. You'll know what direction to change. You'll know what direction to take. And at the same time, because you're working in these short cycles, if things do change over time, something in the market happens, something with a supplier, something that means that your product has to make a great change, by not banking too far into the future, you'll really lower your risk because you'll only ever have to plan 2 weeks into the future. It's a really, really bad human fallacy to believe that we can predict the future, that we know what's going to be true in 6 months to a year, as far as the market, as far as suppliers, vendors, or competition, or anything. But by breaking it down into 2 week cycles, we only have to decide what to do in the next 2 weeks. Without even trying to plan so far ahead, we sort of mitigate the risk of this human fallacy. And we are able to change as the market changes. Changing requirements, market conditions, anything like that. That's why they say that Agile helps businesses respond to unpredictability. With Agile, we stop making this mistake of trying to predict the future and just stay in the present, take one thing at a time, and make slow and steady progress and never have to throw things out. You know, if you do have to change direction, as you do more often than usual in a startup, you really mitigate the risk, the things you have to throw away. You really get to stay in the present, stay in the now. Again, if there are any questions, be sure to use the chat feature in YouTube and JP will let me know and I'll be sure to address them. All right, how do you run an Agile project? Some pro tips. If it's a website or an app, it's really easy because you're getting that feedback online and you've got the data in place to, analytics tools to really collect lots and lots of data. A lot of sites are centered around content. So in a first sprint, let's say maybe it's a blog or some sort of other content-based site, you're not sure exactly what type of content the users really want. Do they like blogs better? Do they like infographics? Do they just want short tweets? You're not sure exactly what kind of content to create within this market, what formats work best. Let's say what lengths work best. Do they like shorter articles, longer articles? Do they like videos? Well, in your first sprints, just try one of these things, or one or two. Maybe try two, and then you see which perform better. Once you get some feedback, you'll see what got the most traffic. Add more of that content. Maybe you figure out that people like blog articles, but you're not sure of the length. Put out a bunch of blog articles, a pretty decent variety, see what's most popular. That's the feedback cycle. In the next sprint, try to focus on what was most successful, throwing away the things that were not successful. Or at least those things that weren't successful, change it up a little bit, see if you can improve it, and then try again to make that more successful, get it more traffic. When you've got any kind of software, apps, website, anything like that, remember we're about delivering value and having an MVP mindset. So you want to focus the most on working functionality, making it work, delivering value. And I know I'm a designer saying this, but there are some times when you're not quite ready to give it a great design. You got to make it work first, for sure, and then you once you're sure, once you're sure that it works, then you absolutely want to go into the user experience, making it look nice, giving it the brand feel. But you don't want to design around something that you're not even sure is the right thing to create. So that's why you got to run these tests first. Now we've been talking about a lot of like creating new stuff. Agile also absolutely can be used to solve a problem. Sorry about the menu. If you're trying to find a solution to a problem, you're not sure what this best solution will be, but you know you got to try something. So why not try one possible solution to a problem in one sprint? And if it works, great. See how well it worked. Is there more you can do in that direction? Great. If it doesn't work, you'll get to try another solution. Now, if you're using 2-week sprints, there's not an enormous investment you have to make in a solution that you're not sure is going to work. Really, everything here is about problem solving. Even creating new content is about problem solving. So you can think of any question you want to answer as trying to find a solution to a problem. If one doesn't work, try another one. If it does work, great. But if it's not the right solution, you will have invested a minimum amount of resources in going in the wrong direction. That's why it minimizes the risk. Some other pro tips about how to run an Agile project. If you're going to fit something release ready into a 2-week cycle, it's really essential to break down the large tasks into small ones. I would say a good general rule of thumb is that no one task should take longer than 12 hours of estimated resource time. If it's going to be longer than 12 hours, you got to break it down further. You got to find a way to focus it down more to the bare essentials. And depending on the size of your team, see how many 12-hour tasks, 12-hour max tasks you can fit in 2 weeks. It just really depends on the size of your team. A good way to think about resource planning in Agile is that you want to fit the tasks to the calendar, not the calendar to the tasks. The old way of project management says, we have a thing to do, how long will it take us to do? And that could be an unlimited amount of time. If someone says it takes weeks, people would just take weeks. If they said it takes months, it would just take months. But Agile is more about saying, look, this is our sprint calendar, these are our 2-week increments, and they never change, and we're not going to extend these deadlines. You can't, in Agile, say this sprint has to be 3 weeks because we have too big of a task to complete. That means you have to break it down more. Really, you want to think of these 2-week cycles as very, very regimented and never break them, never move the deadline. If you cannot finish it to release ready in that 2-week cycle or whatever you have decided for your sprint length, you have to make the tasks smaller. That's the only way. It's tough, and even just me saying this it seems like a big secret, but it's so hard in practice. It really takes time. That's what we try to refine at our company. Another part of this keeping Agile, keeping to the calendar, is just don't start tasks that you can't finish in your sprint time. If you can't finish it, break it in half, break it in thirds, break it down smaller. If we say that each day consists of about 6 hours of focused work, then a 12-hour task is about 2 days. So if you've got 10 days in your sprint, you should be able to get several 6 to 12-hour tasks done, depending on the size of your team. That's how you want to think about it. At the same time, you don't want to skimp out on the quality assurance. It's a really, really bad mistake that I've seen happen over and over, even on Agile teams, to leave the QA till the end or just be too optimistic about QA. This is a huge thing that trips up many projects, especially software projects and websites. They leave QA to the end and they can't release on time because they just kind of cross their fingers that everything would work. You want to be performing QA continuously. Another reason why we say 12 hours of work max per task is that, let's say in the first 2 days you complete one 12-hour task. Great. After that, let's say it's a Monday and Tuesday it gets worked on Wednesday it can go right to QA. Even if your next release is the following Friday. QA should be a constant, continuous thing. That's really one of the secrets to meeting these tight deadlines, is that you don't leave QA to the very end and it becomes this bottleneck. Because if something goes wrong, if it doesn't pass, you have to go back and do it again. And if this is happening on a Friday afternoon, evening when you're supposed to be releasing, that's not the right time. It'll make you miss the deadline. Same time, a really tough thing to get used to in an Agile project is not changing sprint deadlines. Pretty much you have a 2-week cycle. It goes from one Monday to the following Friday. If you're not done by that Friday, you just don't release. You fail the sprint. Don't give it a few more arbitrary days. Keep those calendar dates religiously. Pretty much, if this happens in your team, you have to say, we will not release the sprint. It'll just go up into the next sprint. Roll it over. But don't arbitrarily change these dates. And if you know that you're not going to meet the deadline in advance, try reducing the scope of the work, breaking it down more, as we said. When you're getting ready for release, you want to make sure that within all the other requirements, you want to be able to get it finished, release ready, because if it's not release ready, it's not going to deliver value to your customers. Make it stable, bug-free, and if you need to, pare away some non-essentials. That's what I mean by if it isn't complete. Take away something that's non-essential. If you can only make one thing work, that's great. The other 3 things that still have bugs, they've got to roll into the next sprint because you're not done with them yet. Now, just because Agile is something that's, as the name implies, very malleable to change and changing direction, it doesn't mean that you are always winging it. A product should still have a roadmap, a long-term plan, and you want to be always setting goals and measure progress towards those long-term plans. Collect the data, see if you're still going in the right direction, the direction you intended, or if you have to change your intended direction. Now, a pro tip for handling the many ideas you're going to have and all the things that you're going to want to do on your product. You can't do everything at once. You know that you have to pare it down to a few essential things in order to get it done, stable, bug-free, and release ready for your sprint release date. Take down everybody's ideas, take down the things that everybody wants, and keep them in a backlog, or product backlog as it's called in Agile. Collect everybody's ideas in some sort of bucket, just so, so that everybody knows that they've been heard. But when you're planning the next sprint, go into this bucket and say, okay, which of the 300 things we wanted to do, which are the 10 that are most important to get done this time? What are the highest priorities? What are the most time sensitive? But you're not dismissing anyone's ideas. You're not throwing them away. You're not forgetting them. You're just kind of keeping them hidden away until their time comes. This will make everybody in your team feel better because they'll still feel heard, and it'll still be able to prioritize and focus on a few things at a time. And of course, depending on the size of your team, is going to determine how much you can get done every sprint. This is related to a very popular productivity system that I use called Getting Things Done, or GTD, which basically says that if you write down a task, you know something you have to do, it tends to ease your anxiety and nervousness about it. You kind of stop thinking about it. It stops bothering you. You clear up mental space. So yeah, to-do lists, an essential tool in any kind of business. Now, everything we've talked about previously, it's really kind of general information about Agile and Lean. These are not methodologies that we made up. These are things that exist in the world. They've existed at many of the companies I've worked at, and that I've learned. But what we do at our company that's different is really kind of bringing these methodologies into the design world, into the creative world, into a field that's a lot less straightforward than a software product or an app or a website. To do Agile design is really tough to explain, but we want to take these same efficiencies, improvements that have been done to other areas of business and bring them into the design business, because it's really a field in sore need that has suffered from a lot of these symptoms of finding it hard to release, finding it hard to get started, getting out into the market. And design is something that is related to every single product, every single business out there. So how do you create design works the same way that you efficiently create a product or a website or an app or anything like that. There's a couple of tenets to it. We often do embrace minimalistic design style. And that's not to say that we do anything quick and lazy. Really, minimalistic design using few elements is harder to do than more complex design because you only have a few tools at your disposal. Color, white space, maybe line, shape, a few essential like pieces of art. You don't, that's all because that's all you can create in that time. You don't have time for like custom illustrations, custom photography, anything else. It really does take a very, very experienced designer to do minimalism in a way that still looks very, very professional. However, because we have such talent on our team, we can do this quickly and still produce a professional result that can be done quickly by someone that has the right experience. And definitely not everybody can do it. Minimalism is not the same as cutting corners or rushing. It just means that you have fewer resources. You do them more with fewer resources. When we talk about the purpose of design, really it's about communication. The value delivered with design is communicating information. So we want to deliver essential value with our design products by conveying essential information. We want the main goal of what we create to communicate, to deliver the information it needs to deliver, and then thinking about impressing or giving a specific, very specific message secondary. And it's tough. This is a really, really tough thing to accept for a lot of creative people because they think of the works of design as first and foremost the job is to impress people, is to look good, is to express a sort of creative viewpoint. And we say no, it's about delivering information first and foremost. And it's quite odd to think that like the job design isn't to look good, but it's a tool. Design, everything design is a tool. Another problem that tends to plague creative business and creative works is not knowing the right answer, not being sure of the right answer, and believing that you can think up, if you spend enough time thinking, you will come up with the right answer. It can be rather self-indulgent because you don't want to release a website, you don't want to release a flyer logo because you haven't come up with the exact right answer and you need to think about it more. We say in Agile design, it's as Agile, this is 2 weeks. Just solve problems by doing, by running these experiments, just as in Lean. Trial and error almost, rather than endless just navel gazing, you could say. We want to solve problems by doing. Again, part of the minimalism thing and conveying essential information is trying to minimize the subjective, being objective, being practical with the works. Go for things a little more neutral, taking fewer risks with the look of something at first. We're still iterating. We're still improving things over time, but we want whatever feeling we're trying to project with the branding, whatever it may be, to be based on real feedback, real information. Just like with any project, we want to take feedback for it. Part of any lean or agile process, as I said before, you almost have to assume that your first iteration, your first 5 iterations are going to be bad and people will not like them and you'll have to change direction. One thing that prevents people from running agile and lean projects is just the fear of making mistakes, the fear of being wrong. And really, like, you need the thick skin. If you're going out there with an MVP with a beta version and you expect people to not like it very much, but you need to know what they do like. That's how you learn. It's really a trial and error process, making a best guess and seeing how it works. So the fear of making mistakes is something that does really plague a lot of creative businesses. That's why you get this too much of this endless navel gazing. It's just procrastinating on the inevitable. But we want to cut that out in our design process. At the same time, we know that as much as we have to be very bare bones and all this minimalistic in these first few sprints, working with few resources, that doesn't mean that we don't strive for perfection, that we don't strive for something amazing. We just know that it has to happen over time and it has to happen with feedback and data. A good way of encapsulating all of this is done is better than perfect. It's a trite phrase, but it really does encapsulate what we're trying to do here with design work. Because design work, all creative work, can be endlessly plagued more than other businesses with perfectionism. And we're about getting it done. Done is better than perfect. Get it out into the world and then decide what's perfect, what to do next. Now, it's all well and good to try to explain with words what Agile design looks like, but it's design. It's probably better done with pictures. So in this talk, I give a hypothetical, mostly hypothetical story of how to apply Agile design in the real world to a real life situation. Let's say an agency just like ours wants to do more live talks. They're trying to get into various venues to give talks around the city. It's a new initiative. It's just like a startup in and of itself. The lecture project for this company. They have other things that they do, and now they want to try doing something different, giving talks. They're shopping around various venues, just like a new business is trying to get new customers, trying to get something off the ground. They get accepted to one venue. It's great, we got a slot for you, but the only thing we have available is in a week from now. So we're going to need your flyers by the end of the day in order to book you and to get you out to our members. And the agency says, wow, that's really tough. I mean, we want to take advantage of this opportunity. We know that we need to get off the ground. We need to get something out there as far as talks. But gee, by the end of the day, you want a flyer? We've got so much other stuff booked. We've got other deliverables, other obligations to our clients. How can we possibly create a flyer in such a short amount of time? Now, this is all very allegorical for any sort of time constraint faced by any new business trying to get something off the ground that's desperate for opportunities and has to learn to work quickly. Despite this being a hypothetical design agency, we know we can only devote about an hour of the day before 5 p.m., let's say, to deliver the flyer to the venue. So we decide what can we possibly do in an hour and no more, because we don't want to miss any other deadlines. Well, perhaps this is all you can do in an hour. Write some copy, throw it on the page. No pictures, no illustrations, no stock, nothing, no debates. This is something that's very objective. Anybody on the team can agree with it. It's definitely minimalistic. At the same time, it's not quite unprofessional. There is some typographical finesse, some hierarchy, the basic concept of typography, but we're only using typography here. We didn't even want to bother with pictures because it would take too long to find even stock art, and then there would be this endless debate on what's the best kind of stock art, blah 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 blah. We're sort of cutting all that out and saying, look, the purpose of the flyer is to inform people about the event. Does this inform people about the event? Does it convey essential information? Great. Then it delivers value, and because we are under these harsh constraints, this is what we can do in the allotted time frame. An hour is sort of like the allegory for like your 2-week sprint. And it doesn't wow people quite yet. We would like to do more in the future, but hey, we don't even know if this whole lecture thing is really going to be successful. So on the other hand, we want to spend more time on this, but on the other hand, we don't even know if this event is going to go well. So why would we spend more than an hour making the flyer for the lecture? We don't even know if anyone will attend. We don't know if the content of this lecture is what people want to hear. So let's make an MVP flyer. You can call this the MVP flyer. It takes the minimum amount of resources needed to deliver the essential value. It's an MVP, it's a prototype. Let's just see how it works. It'll work, right? Okay, we deliver this to the venue. We present in a week, the hypothetical design agency. And let's say on February 19th, we get 10 people to show up. Great. That's significantly more than zero. And you know what? The company can now say we have held a live talk. They went from 0 talks to 1. It's like the infinite difference between 0 and 1, between something and nothing. And they only had to spend an hour squeezed into the day to get this flyer. They took advantage of the opportunity that would have otherwise passed them by. Who knows how long it would have taken for them to get another opportunity for a brand new talk at another venue. They're brand new. They have nothing to show for themselves yet, so they want to take advantage of every opportunity to do these talks. They have, very little choice other than to, get the flyer out in an hour. And they got some limited success that they can build on. They can say, we've held a talk. Okay. They want to build on the success of this. They're invited back to the venue. Now that the hypothetical agency knows that people like this talk, and they've gotten some feedback from the people that did attend, they're going to say, now we want to spend a little bit more time on the flyer. Let's get some illustration in. Let's change up the layout. And let's use this for our next talk. See how much improvement we get. At the same time, they'll tweak the content, they'll have a little bit more time to promote, and all these other things. And maybe they get 20 people the next time. They say, wait, great. This thing is really getting off the ground. This lecture series is really getting off the ground. People tend to like this. They get more and more feedback. And what you see on the right here is the final version of the flyer that we used for this talk series. Now, it's sort of an exaggerated, dramatical version of our story, doing this very same talk. But, there's definitely truth to it. There's definitely truth to it. We definitely did iterate on this. We definitely didn't know if it was going to be successful at first, but now that we've done it several times, we know that people really do like it. And different versions of the flyer were put out as we gained more and more success. It became, suddenly we knew it would be worth it to get the custom illustration and everything else, and to invest more time, spend several hours, really finessing the flyer. That's the concept of iteration. To get to here, to get to the nice stuff, you have to be willing to start with something ugly. You have to start somewhere, and like this is the MVP. This is you feel a little bit of disgust, you feel a little bit of shame, but you have to start somewhere. The first version of anything really ends up ugly. But remember, this only took an hour. This took the minimum amount of resources, and what was really important was the talk anyway. We had to see if the talk would work. The flyer wasn't the essential thing. We had to deliver a good product, a good business by, talking about something relevant people wanted to hear about. Once we knew that people did want to hear about it, we invested more. Let's say, for example, though, that we made this flyer and perhaps nobody showed up to the talk. Or we did the talk and people they were confused by it. They didn't think it was really what they needed to learn about. Maybe the experiment was a failure rather than a success. Hey, you only spent an hour on this flyer for something that didn't work out. You expended the minimum amount of resources. That's the other advantage of the MVP, that it's quick and cheap to produce. Maybe we decide that we're not going to do launching your brand online. We're going to do another series because people don't care about this. They care about logo design. All right, so scrap this. We only spent an hour on it. It's not a big waste. Next time we're going to try a flyer about logo design. Just do something different. Sometimes the experiments are a success, sometimes they're a failure. They're probably more failure more often than they're a success. But with the MVP mindset, you minimize your risk, you minimize the investment, you minimize your losses. And that's really the really way to go for a new business where everything is uncertainty, everything is always changing. All right, again, if we have any questions, I'm going to be looking out, keeping an eye on the Google chat from JP, who will let me know everybody's feedback. All right. Finally, we want, of course, everybody here to be able to make some progress on their branding, on their marketing at the end of this talk. And all of this stuff is very, very theoretical. It's good ideas. It might make a lot of sense, but we want to show you some ways to apply it in real life. These are all things, Remix's brand MVP quick launch tips, that can be done today. Absolutely. You could go today from nothing to something with your branding. Here is our logo quick launch plan. Now, this will almost seem almost borderline offensive, and you will be shocked that a design company is telling you to do this. But this is all, remember, this is all about the MVP. This is not about the final version of anything. This is about going from something to nothing, and it's all about how to get the first version out, no matter how bare bones it is. If you don't have a logo, I mean, you want to have something. You want to have something to put up on your profile, on your website. So here's how you today, without the help of a designer, should go about creating a logo. Now, these are all sort of prerequisite things. Even if you followed all of these steps today, you could still, when the time comes, come to a design agency and progress on the plan. Now, logo design is one of our favorite things to do at Remix Design. Even if you followed all these steps, this is to get you an MVP. This is not to give you the final version of the logo. You come to an agency later, a designer later, to improve on it, to take the next few steps. Still using the Agile process, but without taking too much money upfront, because you want to invest in those professional services when you have a little bit more assurance of success. So, and a lot of the stuff is really quite obvious, but still, people still come to us without having done these things. To get a logo, you need obviously a name for your business, something that's memorable and unique and is not being widely used by another company in the same field or the same industry. We put it as a 1.5. Register that name legally as a business entity. Get your EIN, business bank account, everything that you actually need to transact business with a company like ours. These are sort of the basic prerequisites of doing any kind of business. When you think about branding, the simplest way we can simplify it, bare minimum stuff, is just, as we were saying, branding is about giving your business personality. So choose 3 to 5 branding personality traits and make them things that could also be used to describe a human. Remember. From there, go on the internet, choose a font that vaguely fits this personality from a free font repository. There are free fonts out there. I mean, they're honestly like they're not made by professionals. They will look rather unprofessional. But there are some decent ones out there. They're freeware, like Google Fonts and things like that. You'll be able to find a decent placeholder. After you choose the font, choose a few colors. Make sure that they match this personality. Yellow is bright and sunny. Blue, conservative and calm. Black, something that's neutral and trendy. There's so much that goes into color theory, absolutely, but we're just doing MVP, so just fit something that vaguely fits. There are a number of different free apps for editing images. Here's one that we suggest here. It's called Pixlr. Just a very, very simple sort of like in-browser Photoshop clone. Create a new image and just write out the name of the company that you chose in the brand font and the colors. And congrats, you have an MVP logo. Very, very simple. Bare minimum stuff. It's just something to get started. Just so you have something rather than nothing. With a website, there are many, many different ways that you can launch a website quickly. We're going to tell you the ones that we recommend, because it is the best balance of quick and easy and scalable. What happens, unfortunately, with a lot of these like quick website building editors is that they're built with like the equivalent of like children's blocks. They're not something that you can scale up later, and in almost all these cases, you have to throw out that website later and start all over when you want to get something that's not just an MVP. So what we suggest is, of course, registering the domain names. Domain names are cheap, and it's perfectly viable to just, even if you're not sure what name you're using, just register a bunch of them. And if you don't use them within a year, just let them expire. You just want to get to it before someone else does, because when someone else gets it, you're probably never going to get it. Next, find a real web host with some sort of easy-to-use control panel, something that you can use as a non-techie. Depending on the web host, we're not going to endorse any specific companies here, but your web host and your domain registrar may be different companies. There are some companies that let you do all in one. We want you to have this easy-to-use control panel because we want you to install 2 very important things: WordPress, the content management system, blogging system, and Google Analytics. When you set up a WordPress site, which you can do with a couple clicks and a good control panel, your homepage will be the sample blog post when you go into the WordPress control planner. This is your home page. Instead of creating a new one, we just want you to edit the placeholder page and just put the most basic information. That's all. Don't worry about fancy copywriting. Just put all the same stuff you'd put on a business card. Very, very basic information. We just want to get something out there. If you can figure it out, put in your MVP logo image and put in your brand colors. And congrats, you have an MVP website. Yeah, it's not much more than an online business card, but it's something where people can go when they type in, your domain name and find information about your company. It's a placeholder, but it is still your home on the web, somewhere for you to park something to develop later. And again, this is the method we recommend because even though this setup is relatively easy, you can scale it up later. If you go with a Weebly, if you go with too much of a WYSIWYG editor, you will almost certainly have to throw out that website later. But this, you could scale up. WordPress is a very popular content management system. Google Analytics also, it's going to be about that data. You want to be able to know who's visiting, how much traffic you're getting. Social media, it's a whole big, very, very complicated world. Absolutely. So this is a vast oversimplification, believe me. Vast oversimplification, but it will get you something. First, just as you want to register that domain name, you want to create your social media accounts. I say on all networks, but really it's about being on all the networks that's relevant to your target market. A lot of that has to do with age. Social networks are very, very highly divided by age, by industry. You can register accounts on everything. No one will stop you, but almost no brand is on every single platform ever, because very few brands have products that go across all age groups, all demographics. That's not likely you. So to find out where your target market hangs out, is it Twitter? Is it Facebook? Is it Snapchat? It'll all depend on your business. Now, any social media profile you'll be able to customize in an easy way. Put your logo up as your profile picture, maybe some colors, depending. Twitter has that. You can also link to that MVP website you just created, your web address. You can also go back to your MVP website, add those social media accounts. And there's a lot that really goes into content creation for social media, a lot, and the copywriting. But if you're not having the resources to create that content quite yet, why not do two things? Basically, find easy and quick ways to create content, such as take photos of your work, your office, your daily life at the company. This is a good something for Instagram that's really based on photos and is kind of about documenting daily life. Share articles, maybe that you didn't write but are relevant to your target market that you found of interest. Just share them with your audience. Become at least a newsfeed of interesting information. Why not promote other people's things, other complementary companies? Things that are going on in your area, in your industry. If you go out and attend an event, perhaps post some photos of that. It's an easy way to create content. You're already going. All you got to do is remember to snap a few photos. Also, post news about your company. You are a work in progress. You are life at a startup. It's exciting stuff. So post updates about the product. If you want to do a sale, discount, promotion, early adopter, post that. Again, it's all about providing that value, and you want your social media account to have some value to the target market. If they see things like this, they'll have a reason to follow. And social media is all about connection. Follow people, follow your contacts, your connections, engage with them, reply to their stuff, get other people to follow you in exchange for following back. And again, engage with others. Promote other people's content. That, as long as it's still relevant to your target market, retweet, follow, add, favorite. Get engaged, become part of the online community. Participate in conversations. Promote other people's things, make comments, give them feedback. Because it is social media. It's not a one-way advertising channel. It's a conversation. If you do all that, and if you do it on a regular basis, you'll have an MVP social media presence. Couple of easy steps, probably things that anybody could do within a day, maybe a few days, to go from no presence at all to some kind of presence, some kind of online marketing presence, some kind of brand presence. Because you go to 0 to 1, you don't want to stop at 1, you want to get to 100, right? And And this is just kind of like the first step in a journey of 1,000 miles. The MVP is the first step on the product journey, on the brand's journey. When you decide you want to do more with your logo, with your website, with your social media, with any of your content channels, that's where a company like mine comes in. We really focus on branding because we really feel like the branding is something that applies to any company in every industry, because every company wants to be known for something. They want to have a certain personality. They want to be thought of a certain way. However, so many branding and design agencies suffer from these problems that we're trying to solve. They take too long to produce. They're about, they're about the individual designer's creative desires rather than the customer's desires. They don't take in feedback. They're based on best guesses. They're not iterative. They just take too long. They take too many resources, and they can be a gamble if you don't know if that's the right solution. So what we try to do, the reason we work with entrepreneurs and new businesses, and why we adopt Agile and Lean, because we know that every company needs good branding, good design, and that you need to be able to do it in an efficient manner for the best value for the time and money, while lowering your risk and being able to change direction. So that's why we are an Agile design agency, and the only one of our kind of our size. And it takes a lot off the entrepreneur's plate. We have the experience to do this, and we really enjoy just working with the little guys. It's maybe is not as glamorous, it's not as high profile, and it's not as lucrative, but that's what we're really passionate about, helping entrepreneurs get off the ground. Things you can do with an agency: create a logo that meets more of the requirements of a good logo, something that's professional, versatile, unique, and different variants. We actually have a whole nother talk that we do just about logo design. It's an extremely complex field. The logo is the most important work of design your company has, and it's the hardest thing, I believe, the hardest thing to design of anything. It takes the most expertise to do something that's really elegant and really can encapsulate your company in a single picture. Other things you might need: style guides, something that's really essential to a brand, sort of like a formula for creating every other work of design. Really makes consistent branding much, much, much easier. Business cards, pitch decks, big thing for startups. It really makes a great impression if you go in with a professionally designed pitch deck. You've got a lot more work to do on your website, of course. One of our favorite things to do. It's one of your most important pieces of marketing. There's user experience, there's accessibility, there's responsive design to think about, mobile devices. You may need certain features. You need SEO. There's so much that we like to do with customers here. It's just like holistic marketing, content creation, but doing it the Agile way. That's really the unique plug. That's this is a little bit of our salesy plug at the end here, but we want to let you know that we're presenting our methodology here, and you can do whatever you want with this information. But we want to tell you that our goal, if you are an entrepreneur who wants to be able to launch a brand, wants to go from something to nothing, who really wants to get set up for success in the long term, and wants to do it through design, and knows how important design is, how important branding is, then that's what we want to help you with. But if you only learn one thing today, if you want to take one thing out of this presentation, is always do something rather than nothing. You do nothing for your branding, you get nowhere with branding. You do something, you start to build it over time. The earlier you start, the better. And we want you to get started today. We want you to go away and think, what can I do to get off the ground? So feel free to share with us any kind of actions that you feel that you will take after making this presentation. What have you been inspired to do? What some things will you do today? And again, we're always here to answer questions. We're looking for feedback on this series to see, how we can better teach entrepreneurs about how to best go about their design and their branding, getting off the ground. So, and of course, this has been a live and interactive webinar, and we want to take any questions before heading offline. All right then, it has been my pleasure to present this to you today. And we hope to see you at another future presentation, webinar, or live talk. Thanks again. This has been Lisa Schrader.